Good afternoon. I'm Christine Miller, Executive Director of the Utah State University Honors Program, and it is my pleasure to welcome you all, students, alumni, faculty, administrators, staff, friends, and community members, to the 49th Annual Honors Last Lecture. A special welcome to all you curious students who are here today actively taking the Honors Dare to Know. Each year, our students nominate professors who have made a true academic impact on their lives for the award of Honors Outstanding Professor of the Year. A committee of honor students interviews finalists and selects one exceptional professor, who then imagines and delivers what might be their last lecture if that professor had only one more to give here at USU. We are so pleased today to hear from our 2024 Honors Outstanding Professor, Dr. Laura Gelfand from the Department of Art and Design in the Caine College of the Arts. I know that every honors last lecturer is a beloved professor, and so it's very important to note that this lecture today will not actually be Dr. Gelfand's last. We hope that she will continue talking with students and colleagues for years to come here at USU. I'd like to extend special thanks to Ray Kaplan and Hazel Harris, the students who nominated Dr. Gelfand for this award, and to the students who served on the Honors Last Lecture Committee. Those students this year were Jacob Sagers as the chair, and committee members Ileana Castellanos-Santa Rosa, Caitlin Drake, Hazel Harris, Jane Schmidt, Zara Staley, and Emily Westman. I'd also like to thank the Performance Hall team and the USU Honors Program staff, especially Andy Lydoff and Jennifer Cortez, for their extensive planning and work behind the scenes to make this event a success. Before I introduce our provost, I'm pleased to welcome all the faculty and administrators who are joining our students today in celebration of USU's extraordinary teaching and mentoring. Whether you're new to USU or have been teaching here for many years, I want to thank each one of you for supporting the University Honors Program and helping to make USU's classrooms some of the best in the world. It is now my great pleasure to welcome to the podium Utah State University Provost and Executive Vice President, Dr. Lawrence Smith.
Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Chris. And thank you to all of you for being here. It's my pleasure to be here today and express USU's support of the 49th Annual Honors Last Lecture. The University Honors Program reflects Utah State University's values of excellence, ambition, courage, innovation, and respect. We should be proud of the University Honors Program and everyone who was a part of it. The last lecture is the Honors Program's annual celebration of the outstanding teaching and research and service by USU's faculty. Each year, since 1976, which I remember, I was a junior in college. Well, actually, I don't remember much about that year, come to think of it. USU Honors students have recognized faculty who had a profound impact on their lives. Today, we are delighted to hear from Dr. Laura Gelfand as the Students Committee's selection for the 2024 Honors Outstanding Professor. In keeping with tradition, honors students will introduce Dr. Gelfand. But it is my job and my pleasure to introduce the student introducers. All right? So I would like to introduce Hazel Harris and Ray Kaplan, each of whom nominated Dr. Gelfand to deliver today's Honors Last Lecture. Hazel is an art major who will specialize in graphic design or art education. Hazel is involved on campus as the Caine College of the Arts representative on the Honors Student Advisory Board and serves as an undergraduate teaching fellow. She is a recipient also of the Daniels Fund Scholarship. Ray is an art history major with minors in psychology and linguistics and a certificate in museum studies. Ray has been awarded USU's Presidential Scholarship and is also an undergraduate teaching fellow, as well as a lead writing fellow and a student assistant in the Office of Research. Let's please welcome Hazel Harris and Ray Kaplan to this stage.
My name is Hazel Harris, and I have the honor of working currently with Dr. Gelfand in her honors course, Dogs in Art, as an undergraduate teaching fellow. Dr. Laura Gelfand is a professor of art history in the Department of Art and Design, and also an avid animal lover and protector. It is no surprise then that over the past 10 years, much of her work has focused on canids, such as dogs and wolves. When I signed up for Dogs in Art as a first-year honors requirement, I was convinced that we would spend the class looking at that painting of dogs playing poker and possibly watch one of my personal favorite movies, All Dogs Go to Heaven, which I later found out Dr. Gelfand really hates that movie. Instead, I found the unique opportunity to have my mind open to ideas I'd never thought of before, to share my perspective on current issues, and ultimately to create relationships that I hadn't anticipated, but I'm so grateful for. My favorite project that I've been working on with Dr. Gelfand is Spooky Pup Fest, where the event just completed the second year. If you don't know what Spooky Pup Fest is, it's the community engagement aspect of Dr. Gelfand's honors course, where a fundraiser is organized for Cache Humane Society. I have loved being able to feel a part of the Cache Valley community, as well as the honors community, due to Dr. Gelfand's work with this course. We will now hear from Ray Kaplan.
Thank you. I first met Laura in an earlier year of that same honors dogs in art class back when I was a freshman. I was pre-med at the time, pursuing a path that I hated, but one that I thought was right for me just because I had been told that it was the best choice. Little did I know that the class that I was taking, also just to fulfill an honors requirement, would forever change the course of my life. As I heard Laura talk about art, I saw a passion that I didn't know one could have about a subject. She used art history to make meaningful observations about everything, from animal ethics to the nature of humanity. To know Laura is to be not just inspired, but required to add a layer of introspection to your life. And I did just that. I changed my major, I decided to pursue what I could find passion for, and I resolved to question the system that told me what was the best choice. Laura helped me to find my sense of self and to defend it. And I could not be more thrilled to see my professor, my mentor, and my friend receiving this honor. So without further ado, it is now my great pleasure to present to you the 2024 Honors Outstanding Professor, Dr. Laura Gelfand.
Oh my gosh, how am I going to follow that up? Whew. Thank you. Thank you so much. You know, the monitor's not on in the front, just so you guys know, the one that I was going to use to see what slide I was on. But I can probably look behind me. In any case, so thank you, Ray and Hazel. And I also want to thank the students who served on the last lecture committee for all their hard work. And huge thanks to Jen Cortez, Andy Leidhoff, and Chris Miller for their help organizing this wonderful event. Thanks as well to the IT folks from the Caine College of the Arts, especially Ricardo and Eddie. And I am so grateful to graphic design alumnus Maddie Anderson for designing the graphics for my lecture and my PowerPoint. I do want to clarify one more time that this is not actually my last lecture. I have joked for years that after the last lecture, they take you out back and make sure it is definitely your last lecture. But I know several people who've done it and survived, so I'm pretty sure it'll be okay. As Chris said, the concept, thank you. Oh, see, you just push the button. As Chris said, the concept of the last lecture is that this is the lecture you would give if it really was the last lecture of your career at the university. With that in mind, this lecture is a lot more autoethnographic than my normal class lectures. As such, it is new territory for me, but I encourage all of you to keep in mind that even though the thread that pulls this lecture together is me and my experiences, my intention is for this to provide a space for the students in the audience to think about and reflect on their own futures and consider how they want to shape them. I grew up in Salt Lake, which actually looked like that then, which has diversified a lot since then as well. But in the 70s and early 80s, it was a culture entirely dominated by the LDS Church and its worldview. My high school was 98% Mormon, and I was not part of that culture. As an only child, it was a very lonely childhood. Enter punk. The suffocating aspects of Salt Lake's dominant culture produced a pretty sizable group of disaffected youth who jumped at the chance to develop and nurture a robust subculture. Thanks to punk, I found my people, and it helped me develop an ethos that has remained with me to the present day. So I'm going to start with a few key terms and ideas. Punk is not just fashion or music. It is a way to highlight and question what Althusser has called the false obviousness of everyday practice. Now, questioning the world we live in and the systems that support it rarely solves specific problems. What it does is provide new ways to work and think productively within the tensions that it exposes. Punk is a spectacular subculture. What does that mean? Punk's appeal as a subculture is fundamentally intertwined with its highly developed visual culture. In terms of ideology, punk is fairly straightforward, and I'll speak more about that in a minute. But it is essential to understand that one key aspect of punk is its visibility. The visual is part of punk's power and its appeal. Subcultures are distinguished by what they are and what they are not. Punk rock is seen as a sincere representation of youth culture that is habitually in opposition to mainstream culture. Being an outsider is central to punk identity. In Salt Lake City, as a non-Mormon, I was forced to be an outsider. Although I didn't choose that identity, punk gave me a way to question it and ultimately come to embrace it. Thanks to this experience, I came to believe that acting against the dominant forces and for the marginalized is the honorable role of the marginalized. The punk scene gave me friends and a supportive community for the first time, and the importance of that cannot be overstated. But in addition, because of the spectacular nature of punk, I also became aware of the importance of signs and symbols within the framework of society. Iconography is essentially the study of signs, and it's a big part of what art historians do. For punks, the safety pin became an essential sign. So how do we read the safety pin? The clothes and accessories worn by punks are a stylized presentation of themselves. They're intended to show symbolic resistance, a disaffiliation from mainstream culture, and to form a collective identity of solidarity and belonging within the punk subculture. Punks appropriate signs and symbols to form their fashionable anti-fashion. And this includes wearing safety pins and other things to deliberately shock and offend mainstream sensibilities. So think about it. Safety pins were a utilitarian way to keep parts of clothes together, not decoration, not ornamentation. Punks took something that was deemed insignificant and meant to be hidden and put it front and center making it a key element of the subculture's iconography. Through this act, the object assumes a new and essential meaning that tells us something about the subculture. Punk is all about attitude. According to Ian Ellis, these attitudes include anger, frustration, sarcasm, bluntness, and hostility. These attitudes are meant to foreground an oppositional state of mind and a desire to confront the undesirable. The purpose of these attitudes is to reject and repudiate things that should be despised. Although it's a bit overly idealistic, according to Craig O'Hara, punk is anti-establishment, anti-racist, anti-sexist, anti-homophobic, and pro-feminist. Taken together, this produces a coherent, progressive philosophy. In addition to giving me community and an ethos to live with, punk taught me that collective cultural meanings are inscribed in objects that allow for identity construction. Safety pins are thus an example of merging everyday life and political protest. The mundane, the everyday, is indicative of something bigger, and that something bigger should always be questioned. So I left Salt Lake City as soon as I could and did a semester-long study abroad in Siena and Florence, Italy. This was the first time I had a chance to be entirely on my own, far from home. I knew almost nothing about art history when I left for Italy, but while I was there, I fell madly in love with the study of art and culture, and I still adore it. I think it's because there are no limits to what you can study and the ways in which you can approach it. As some of the older members of this audience will recall, in the early 80s, Europe was a lot further away than it is now. What I mean is that we didn't have cell phones or even email. When I wanted to communicate with my parents, I had to go to the post office and put the call through an operator, and it was expensive. So calls were weekly, short, and informational. It makes it sound like I grew up in the dark ages. It's really weird. Anyway, yeah. Anyway, being on my own and far away gave me a chance to see that the world was far bigger and far more interesting than I had understood up to that point. I came back to the States and moved to New York, then Massachusetts, then Cleveland to pursue degrees. Each step pulled me incrementally closer to my dissertation topic, which I saw as a way to draw attention to one of the most powerful and problematic aspects of Catholic doctrine. My research explored how the fear of purgatory inspired artwork and made money for the Catholic Church in medieval and early modern Europe. Purgatory was invented in 1170 CE. It created a third place between heaven and hell, and it's a place where sins accumulated on earth are purged by fire. The souls in purgatory are those who are not entirely bad, but are not entirely good. So really, pretty much everyone, right? Once sins are burned away in purgatory, the soul moves on to heaven without having to await the last judgment. But purgatory is no picnic. Apparently, the only thing that distinguishes it from hell is that it's possible to get out. The institutional body of the Catholic Church placed itself in the center of what became a transactional system for the afterlife. This gave them enormous power over the faithful. For those who wished to expedite their time in purgatory, the Church introduced indulgences. Indulgences were a bit like a checking account that could draw on the superabundant merits of the saints. The Church could draw on this account to help both the living and the dead earn time off of purgatorial torment. The system made the Church an extraordinary amount of money, and the monetary aspect of that system was shut down during the 16th century Counter-Reformation. But a lot of medieval and early modern art and architecture was produced with purgatory in mind. For my doctoral dissertation, I looked at one example of this that had not been studied in any depth before, the devotional portrait diptych. To start, my big question was why anybody would want a painted portrait of themselves in prayer that was attached with hinges to an image of the Madonna and Child. As I learned, these two-paneled paintings, which are called diptychs, are intended to stimulate and foreground the owner's devotion to the Virgin Mary and her Son. The commissioners used them to inspire daily prayers during their lives. but the power of the paintings continued after they died. For those who inherited these paintings, they were reminders of a devout ancestor, and proper engagement with diptychs included reciting prayers to help expedite the original owner's time in purgatory. It's important to understand that with this kind of imagery, the symbolic and the real are not seen as separate. Instead, they work together to connect the past, present, and future. And that deeply resonant meaning is embedded in these paintings. On a less serious note, what I have always loved about this particular diptych, and the reason I included it here, is that I can never get over how modern Martin van Nieuwenhove looks. He seems like he should be rocking out at a Metallica show, right? I love him. As paintings intended for private prayer, devotional portrait diptychs included all sorts of quotidian things. Here, the panels are copies of paintings by two different artists, but they are combined and personalized for the cleric who commissioned this diptych. I've always been intrigued by paintings with dogs in them, and for the abbot de Hont, the dog is a punning reference to his name, so de Hont, it's hound. But I've always suspected that this adorable dog is also a portrait of the abbot's pet. It doesn't appear in the original painting, but that this is a copy of, and it's specific enough to be a portrait. One quick aside, I found reading so much theological material for my dissertation pretty aversive. So I got a radio show on the campus station that broadcast to much of Cleveland and a lot of fish in Lake Erie. This was in the late 80s, and the post-punk music that I played explored rebellious and antisocial ideas that provided a much-needed antidote to my research. Students, I highly recommend doing something like this. Unexpectedly, it ended up being really helpful for me as a teacher because it taught me how to use my voice, which is a valuable tool in the classroom. So it was this sort of whim that turned out to be something super, super valuable. After earning my PhD, I moved for various academic jobs to Mankato, Minnesota, then Stockton, California, then Akron, Ohio. Pretty much the most beautiful places in the country. I worked my way up the academic ranks at the University of Akron while continuing to research intersections of art with purgatory and indulgences. So how did being a punk influence my teaching and research? As Ellis puts it, quote, punks flock to education, hoping to bring about change in the classroom, institution, and society at large, end quote. As teachers, punks think about how DIY approaches can be used in the classroom, and we explore how institutional hierarchies can be disassembled. We engage in teaching that helps improve inclusivity, particularly for those who are ordinarily and systematically marginalized. Above all else, we emphasize the fundamental importance of critical thinking and provide opportunities for students to see the relevance of these skills through community engagement. For me, this work, both in and outside of the classroom, includes advocating for humans and non-humans. In 2011, I came to USU as head of the Department of Art and Design, and I was so busy that I had very little time for my own research. I've always loved dogs, so just for fun, I organized a couple sessions on dogs in medieval art at a medieval studies conference. The sessions ended up being such a huge hit that I proposed turning the papers into an edited volume, and the result is the book, Our Dogs Ourselves, which was published by Brill in 2016. Please, take a look at that dog on the cover. I think it is one of the best dog portraits ever. And I am so happy I had the chance to make him a star. So let's talk about dogs and wolves. Wolves and humans came together and formed a relationship based on mutual benefit and trust 30 to 40,000 years ago. Recent studies show that we did not domesticate them, but humans evolved together with dogs. Evocative evidence of this early connection is found in a cave in Chauvet, France, where footprints that are 26,000 years old were left in the mud by a small boy who was walking together with a huge wolf-like canid. And humans were buried together with dogs as long ago as 14,000 years. What is so emotionally resonant for me about this history is that our love for dogs and their love for us has not changed significantly in all this time. Dogs are core members of our family, and family is central to who we are. So all of you, how many of you have a picture of your pet on your cell phone? Okay, now keep your hand up if that picture of your pet is actually your screen, like on your screen, like your main screen. Oh, there's still just a few of you. Oh, come on, come on. Who could be more important than that? My God. Anyway, the love we have for our pets is special. John Berger explained that the emotional connection we have with dogs is so important because it is, quote, a companionship offered to the loneliness of man as a species, end quote. Dogs are unique in bridging the chasm between the human and non-human worlds. No other species engages with us like dogs. Not cats, I know, but you all know that's true. You all know that's true. Not horses, hamsters, birds, or lizards, just dogs. While working on the dog book, I discovered the relatively new field of animal studies, a discipline that started in the 70s but really blossomed in the last decade. It is an interdisciplinary field in which animals take center stage. One element of animal studies is the animal turn, which means turning away from human-centeredness toward the animal. Developed out of the animal liberation movement, animal studies is fundamentally moral and ethical. Coming to animal studies from art history is something of a natural transition. As the anthropologist Clifford Geertz said, quote, "Man is an animal suspended in webs of significance he himself has spun," end quote. And as I've already explained, art history is a discipline that focuses on understanding these man-made webs of meaning through the lens of art. Steve Baker was one of the first art historians to make the jump to animal studies, and he made the important observation that, quote, "Any understanding of the animal is inseparable from knowledge of its cultural representation," end quote. With all of this in mind, I made my own animal turn, moving away from the predominantly medieval, early modern, theologically centered work I had done for decades to turn toward canids. As students in my honors Dogs in Art courses learn, when you start looking at how we represent animals, you start to see humans and animals in a very different light. And our relationships with the non-human world become complicated very quickly. Because humans create these representations, and they can be visual, literary, cultural, you name it, the representations will always fundamentally be a projection of human experience. In my work on canids, among other things, I have explored how humans since classical antiquity have used the idea of home and not home to define and distinguish the dog from the wolf. These two canids are so genetically similar that they share 99.9% of their DNA, yet humans have treated them as if they are polar opposites to one another. Historically, we have welcomed the dog into our homes and our lives, yet with a few notable exceptions, we have done everything possible to extirpate wolves from their native habitats. What animates much of my work and my teaching is this question: why do humans treat these two very similar animals so differently? The manuscript pages I illustrate here come from a medieval bestiary, which is a book that compiles real and imaginary animals and gives them moralizing meanings. Here you see the page illustrating the dog on the left. The dogs in the top register are vigilantly guarding a tiny home, while those on the bottom are engaged in hunting, a cooperative activity with humans that, during this period, was strictly the purview of members of the nobility. The wolf, on the other hand, on the right, fearlessly traverses a wild landscape in the top register, while below, a terrified man is dutifully following the recommended way to survive a wolf encounter, which is to take off all your clothes, stand on top of them, and bang two rocks together. These medieval illuminations clearly communicate that distinguishing the dog from the wolf is a matter of life and death. Yet fear of wolves is not unique to the medieval period. In the Renaissance, Neoplatonists used the wolf as a metaphor for the pagan past, describing it as a ravenous beast. This canid monstrosity was set in opposition to Christianity, which was seen as representing the present and the future, and tasked with destroying the wolf of the past without mercy or reason. The use of wolves as metaphors continues today. We reinforce negative stereotypes every time we use phrases like lone wolf, wolf at the door, wolf whistle, or hungry as a wolf. But real wolves are buried in these common sayings, just as they are in fairy tales, films, and other stories and representations. With the wolf, as with devotional portrait diptychs, the symbolic and the real are not separate. The boundary between them is permeable, and we see this in the actual treatment, or more often mistreatment, of wolves that is inspired by their representations. Words and images from the past do not stay in the past. They continue to exert a powerful influence on the present and future. In Wyoming this year, the Wildlife Commission reaffirmed that it is legal to chase wolves down with snowmobiles and run them over. 2 years ago, Idaho authorized a bounty program intended to reduce their wolf population to just 500 wolves from the estimated 1,300 currently living there, a goal that has been called arbitrary and extremely low for a state their size. And here in Utah, where there are no established wolf packs and millions of state tax dollars are allocated annually to anti-wolf lobbying groups, a couple years ago, the Utah State Legislature passed a constitutional amendment banning the reintroduction of wolves. A lot of money is being spent to manage a tiny population of wolves that continue to live in the West. But I bet most of you have never seen a wolf in the wild, and you probably never will. As this slide makes clear, humans and domesticated animals far outnumber wolves in Idaho, and there are even fewer wolves in Utah. So given their tiny population, why should you care about wolves? Even if you are not the sort of person to stand up for what is, in this case, the literal underdog on principle, you should care about what happens to wolves because they are a keystone species. Research has shown that wolves are an essential part of a healthy ecosystem, and their presence in the landscape benefits other animals, vegetation, and even water. The importance of wolves is not marginal, and yet they have systematically been marginalized and exterminated for centuries. You should care about wolves because without them, our world is infinitely poorer in innumerable ways. Related to this, it's important to question why wolves function as such a reliable scapegoat for politicians. A lot of it comes down to the stories all of us have been told about wolves since we were children. There is not a person in this room who doesn't know the story of Little Red Riding Hood. How does our profound familiarity with this fairy tale color how we think about wolves in reality? And beyond that, how is the hatred and fear those stories teach us enmeshed in political and institutional structures? I also want to note that Little Red Riding Hood, it doesn't just teach us to fear wolves. We are also taught that young women are natural victims who make poor decisions about their own bodies, but that is a topic for another lecture. So, back to the wolf. The wolf's iconographic significance, the symbolic baggage that humans have saddled this non-human animal with, has been accumulated over centuries. The wolf we think we know has been carefully fashioned into an ideal scapegoat, and we see the results of this playing out in current legislation. Importantly, you should keep in mind that wolves are far from the only human and non-human animals to have been crafted into useful scapegoats. This is why I say question everything, every story and every system, and seek the truth. Why are things being represented the way they are? What do those representations mean, and how are they being used? There is so much more to say about all of this, and I urge you to follow up on some of the breadcrumbs that I've scattered throughout this lecture. One fundamental thing I hope to inspire in my students is to question the idea of human exceptionalism. In Western culture, humans have gone to great lengths to differentiate ourselves from non-human animals. Yet the more we learn about other species, the less these distinctions hold up. To cite a single example, we used to believe that it was our ability to communicate that set us apart. But birds, bats, whales, dolphins, and elephants communicate in effective and nuanced ways that we are only just beginning to understand. But to return to my journey, what I want to emphasize is that without really meaning to, I ended up with a career that bifurcated into two very different academic disciplines. What connects the two is the ethos I adopted when I first figured out who I was and what mattered to me. What I want all the students here is to consider that what I do now barely existed when I went to grad school. I couldn't have focused on animal studies then because it is that new. There is no way I could have anticipated at any point in my early career that this is where I would end up. Nothing in my training necessarily prepared me to do what I do now, but I had enough training in enough of the right things to make this transition. And I'm happy to do the extra work it requires because I'm passionate about advocating for animals through my work. For me, animal studies functions as a subculture within the larger institutional structure of academe. It's new and ripe for experimentation and new methods. It is fundamentally moral and ethical, and this is a huge part of its attraction for me. The through line for all my work and my life has been to question the status quo while seeking fulfillment in things I feel passionate about. This is what connects me to my punk beginnings and to the ideas and people who saved me as a lonely kid in Salt Lake City. Students, what I hope you take from this is that you don't have to do what people expect you to do or what they think you should do because the future is unknown and unknowable. As Joe Strummer of The Clash said, the future is unwritten. Most of the career advice you'll get, however well-meaning, is probably intended to help you maximize your income. I'm not gonna lie and say money isn't important, but capitalism is a system you should definitely question. You should do whatever you can to resist it. One way to do that is to commit yourself to something you're passionate about. That passion will sustain you through all the challenges you'll face. Plus, you'll be doing something you love and are probably really good at. So, if you don't know what you're passionate about, right? I know. So if you don't know what you're passionate about, do whatever it takes to figure it out. That's one of the purposes of all those gen ed classes that you're required to take. Go on a study abroad, enter the Peace Corps, intern at the national parks, volunteer somewhere. Take yourself out of your ordinary existence to experience something different. Do something that pushes you out of your comfort zone. It's like so important. Spend time away from your family and don't do it in the safe embrace of a familiar ideological network. When you go away, challenge yourself to stay away. Call your parents every other day. Or maybe like limit it to once a day. I don't know, you guys are so strange with your, geez Louise, right? So anyway, but this is the best and quickest way to figure out who you really are. Do whatever it takes to develop a strong sense of yourself. What do you like? What don't you like? Consider these questions outside of a capitalist framework. Pull yourself far enough away from the marketing, social media, and the ideologies instilled in you since childhood to question them and to think critically about them. This is so much harder now than when I was your age. I was able to find a spectacular and supportive subculture that allowed me to explore my identity. Incredibly exciting new music was coming out, and that helped me find friends who shared my interests. We had to physically go to record stores to see new releases. There were magazines and fanzines that you had to read to be in the know. Now, as the Sex Pistols sang, your future dream is a shopping scheme. Consumer culture has stripped popular culture of its uniqueness. It feeds you the illusion that one thing is different from another, but if you step outside of it, you see that these differences are actually insignificant. And true subcultures don't seem to exist in the way that they once did. Algorithms are controlling what you see, what you think, and what you think you care about. Question the system that has empowered those. You either already know yourself or you need to figure out who you are. The person who is distinctly you has a point of view, and that is the person you should be listening to. People who follow their passions and their interests, who desperately want to know more about the world, they are the ones best placed to make a difference. In addition to all of that, there are a few essential things we all need to do. One is to recognize those who came before us and broke boundaries that cleared the way for us. We also need to call out inequity when we see it and do all we can to make this a fair playing field for everyone. With that in mind, I want to note that I am only the 10th woman to deliver the last lecture, a series in its 49th year. I am thrilled that several of the women who have previously delivered last lectures are here this afternoon. Could you raise the lights and could you all stand? Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks for being here. Thank you for your leadership. It's so important. And now I want the audience to think about these numbers. Even if only women were selected to give the last lecture for the next 20 years, it would still not equal out. What this means is that the students in the audience who nominate faculty for the award need to think about what a professor looks like to you. If the first thing that the word professor calls to mind is an older white man with or without a beard, glasses, tweed jacket, and elbow patches, then think about why that is and question your assumptions. Got it? Now do this with everything. Think about and question why you believe what you believe. Why do you think what you think? What cultural baggage are you carrying? Is it positive or negative? How does it make you interact with your community? Try to see the world from a different perspective than your own and embrace that difference. Then do something good. Do something you care about that also makes the world a better place for more than just you. Political philosopher Antonio Gramsci urged, quote, "Turn your face violently towards things as they exist now, not as you'd like them to be, not as you think they were 10 years ago, not as they're written about in the sacred texts, but as they really are, the contradictory, stony ground of the present conjecture," end quote. One of my heroes, Joe Strummer, proclaimed, "To always be a punk rocker is something everyone can do." And I mean that by attitude. Attitude. Now go forth, become yourselves, and change the world. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Gelfand. Before we close, I invite Ileana Castellanos-Santa Rosa, Caitlin Drake, Hazel Harris, Jane Schmidt, and Emily Westman, members of the Honors Last Lecture Committee, on stage to present Dr. Gelfand with the 2024 Honors Outstanding Professor Award, as well as a memento of her talk today. We can do it after. Okay, good. You look great there. Just stay there for a second. So congratulations, Dr. Gelfand, on this well-deserved recognition, and thank you all for attending the 49th Annual Honors Last Lecture. Please join us in the lobby for a reception and the opportunity to talk with Dr. Gelfand after they take these lovely pictures, and I look forward to seeing you out there. Thanks again.
We'll do a separate one with you. I guess Mateo wants to take it from right there.
It's weird that Mateo wants to wait for
Okay, so we got